Thank you for joining me today. I'm so grateful. And I wanted to just start with sharing a little bit about how did you land in government? What was your path to here?
Well, I'm half Irish and half Welsh, and my Irish family were involved in politics in the uprising in 1916, and my Welsh family were involved in politics right up to this day. So it's in my blood. It's in my family. It's in my blood. I studied politics in university, politics and history, back in '76 to '79. I went into teaching, and first day I was made the union rep. I then got involved in local issues, think global but act local. So I got involved in local environmentalism, Amnesty International, anti-apartheid. I became a town councillor. I know that you represent town councils and across the nation. So it's great to be involved with an organisation like yours. So my route into politics was a grassroots way in, and then the opportunity came to stand in my own town I'm born and raised in, and I took the opportunity and I got elected I stood the first time, 1992, didn't get elected, and in 1997 I got elected with a huge swing, I think of about 14%. So that was my route into politics, and I'm a Labour politician from Wales, and I'm proud of what I've done, and I've then moved into mindfulness during Parliament, during my time in Parliament, and now that's my main focus, is taking mindfulness to legislatures around the world.
That is amazing. I love, yes, as the National League of Cities, I love that you started local. Obviously, we are all about local government and local leaders, so that's amazing to hear that that's also how you started in this path. And we're here today to really explore this idea of mindfulness, because mindfulness has been situated in terms of wellness, in terms of leadership development. And I know that a lot of the work that's been done is really around the work that you led in the UK. So how did that even start? How did mindfulness enter your world in the government as part of Parliament?
Yeah, well, when I was a school teacher, and my school, 1987 this was, my school was being inspected by Her Majesty's inspectors, and all the staff got the jitters. So the school nurse came in and she got us to meditate. It wasn't mindfulness, it was meditation. And I enjoyed it so much, I then started using it with the children in my class, 9 and 10-year-old children at that time. And if they'd be out in the playground on a wet and windy day, they would come in and they'd be wet and windy themselves, and I would sit them down and just get them to breathe and center themselves for 2 minutes, and their focus and attention was really improved in that time. I'd use it for creative writing, for dance, for gym, for settling down at the end of the day. I really enjoyed doing it. So that was my first introduction to meditation, and mindfulness came about 20 years later. Practiced by myself for a while. It was pretty stressful. In the United Kingdom Parliament, we had the expenses issues. Mine were relatively all right, but some people, it drove them, it drove them to distraction. And so in 2012, I thought I'd take it to Parliament, and I approached Professor Lord Richard Layard from the London School of Economics, a world expert on well-being, because I had no connections in the mindfulness world, and he said he would approach Professor Mark Williams from Oxford University. Mark and Chris Cullen came down from Oxford to teach in January 2013. And since that time, we've had 300 politicians and 500 members of their staff who've had mindfulness training.
Wow, that is incredible. And now, granted, I don't know if most people would think of this as something that's a place in government, right? Even though clearly there's leaders, and I said there's a connection to leadership development as well as wellness, which is becoming a priority for so many, especially during these times, right, with the pandemic, et cetera. So what was that like to start to enter into this world of merging government and this idea of wellness around the mindfulness framework?
Yeah, well, the whole idea of well-being had grown prior to the work we've been doing in mindfulness in Parliament. And it's really interesting that the two biggest political proponents of well-being in the West were on the right. David Cameron, the Conservative Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and Nicolas Sarkozy, the French president, again on the right, and they measured well-being in 2010. So well-being was creeping up the charts. And in fact, Robert Kennedy, his speech in 1968, he challenged the measurement of GDP and saying it's not just about gross domestic products, because that includes the knives that murder, the guns that shoot, but it doesn't value the quality of our relationships, of our marriages, of our relationships with the children, of our compassion in society. So it's got well-being has got a good pedigree from the left and from the right. And that was the backdrop for when we introduced it in Parliament in 2013. The seeds that we sown fell on fertile ground. And before we knew it, in the first session that we did in January 2013, it was full up. 22 places were filled straight away. And, there was a thirst for it. I had to be careful how I don't even like using the word pitched, but how I pitched it. But it wasn't from a clinical perspective. Oh, I think you're a little bit unsettled. For some people, it was like that. I knew they were struggling. So I'd say, we're having these lessons in Parliament. For others that wanted to flourish, I would pitch it from a flourishing perspective. And for some, I would handpick them, the ministers and shadow ministers that were responsible for prisons and education and the workplace and health. I would say, come along, you might get a good new policy perspective. So it was all encompassing. We had a good response. And as I say, we've trained 300 politicians over the past 8 years and 500 members of their staff. And in a separate initiative, which I had nothing to do with, there was a human dynamo called Marion Furr, who took mindfulness to 3,000 senior civil servants across Whitehall, where the government departments were located. So she took mindfulness to those government departments, to the decision makers. So the whole ecosystem, political and governmental and civil service ecosystem has been sprinkled by mindfulness, and it's bearing fruit. And I'll just show you one of my little tricks that I show. This is the Houses of Parliament. I'm not sure if you can see it there. The Houses of Parliament. There's Big Ben over here, and I think as individuals, we sometimes our minds are like this, and they're all shook up. But institutions also. This happens to institutions as well as individuals, and I think mindfulness has helped this process of settling down the institution, the individual, and settling down the institution to a certain degree. Although Brexit made it go like that. In fact, Brexit made it go like that.
I think we have our own examples of how we've been like the snow globe very recently and in the past. But I just love that idea of it's an individual level and also an institution level. It's something that can work in a system as well as for a human. And I also think that's so interesting that how you situated mindfulness as a practice in government was really not just for the human, but also back to the systems institution, but also for someone, for policy and practice. So it has a bigger impact out into community. That's a powerful practice.
Yeah, and I am a naturally impulsive person. I wanted to go straight in to policy. As soon as we had these 22 names, I wanted to sign them up to policy before the practice. And John Kabat-Zinn had just come over. He said, "Whoa, Chris, slow down. This is a 1,000-year project." Oh no, I'll be 1,054 when it finishes. But he was right. He said, let the others develop over the next year and with their mindfulness, embodying mindfulness. And if it suits them, ask them if they want to be involved in policy. And about half of them, I think, wanted to be involved in the policy part of it. So he was absolutely right. And because they personally felt it, what's the saying, Gandhi, it's attributed to Gandhi, be the change you want to see. They felt change themselves and they want to pass on that change. Mindfulness has been a gift to them. It's a gift that they want to give away. So we had that, the document, we had a cross-party parliamentary inquiry into mindfulness, and we came up with this lovely document with 120 references, many of them scientific references, and it tells, it's got the statistics, but more importantly, It's got the stories of school children and police officers whose lives have been turned around by mindfulness. And this has now been translated into Portuguese, Spanish, and even into Serbo-Croat. 20 million Serbo-Croat speakers will be able to access this now. So it's a document I'm very, very proud of.
As you should be. I have my own copy here as well. And I have to say, I think what was most, spoke the most was just this point of transformation and hearing the quote, reading the quotes from those who participated in your program, and then seeing others in the community and the police force, et cetera, others who are touched by this. And I think that's really at the center of this idea of change, right? And the ability to magnify that and share that out. So that's just so powerful in terms of the mindfulness model. And I know now that you're also, this is going global. You just shared that some of the translations of this report. What has that been like to now bring this to a global community? What do you see are people's initial desires in seeking out mindfulness and also the work that you've done?
Well, we established. Can I just say the UK was not the first to establish a mindfulness practice. It was, in fact, it was a lady on the right, Anne-Marie Broden in Sweden, that established a mindfulness practice in Parliament in 2011, and your own great Tim Ryan established a practice in Congress in 2012. We were late to the game in 2013. But can I say we each did that not knowing what the other had done. So it says something about the zeitgeist at the time that 3 individuals over the space of 18 months, 2 years, took this initiative to establish these practices in their own parliaments. So the zeitgeist was favourable to mindfulness. And I was asked to speak in 2014 at the German Parliament and the Dutch Parliament and the Welsh Parliament. And I could see that there was a thirst and a hunger to develop it there. And since then, I think the 13 parliaments around the world, legislatures around the world, have established mindfulness practice. And we've got another 42 countries now, or 42 in total, that want to do that as well, that establish their practice and then their policy on the back of that, if it suits. So it's, and that's in the space of, well, Anne-Marie Broden, 10 years ago that this has come on. And it's been an amazing journey personally and also politically around the world. And if anything, now is the time for mindfulness in the post-COVID polarized world, threatened with climate change, the uncertainty of artificial intelligence, globalization, what's the next step for that? So you've got all of this uncertainty and change, and how do individuals cope with that on a personal level and on a political level?
So would you say that for someone who's completely new to mindfulness, let's say this is the first time they're hearing about it, and now we've kind of given a little bit of a story and a pathway of someone's journey through it and sharing it out, what would you say is like, why? What's the why of mindfulness? You began with, I love the visual with the shaking of the snow globe, which is, I love that. It's very true. Like it settles, right? And you also were talking about uncertainty, but I'm just curious for someone who's brand new, who's like, I'm not so sure. Why are people, jumping into this? What would you offer to them?
Well, if I can give a statistic from the United Kingdom, and I'm sure you'll know your own statistic, that in the United Kingdom, 25% of adults over the age of 18 are either on antidepressants for sleep, for depression, sleeping tablets for sleep, or opioids for pain. That's a quarter of the population, and those are the legal prescribed drugs. Then you've got people on illegal drugs, on alcohol, on smoking, and people are far from their natures. And there's multiple reasons for that: the way we organize the economy, social media, the decline in volunteering, advertising. There's all of these societal and economic pressures, and people are highly pressurized. And how do you cope with that pressure? So in the first instance, if you want to do that from a position of balance, if you want to make those decisions as a town councillor or a state politician or a national, do you want to be taking it from a position of imbalance or a position of balance? And how are you going to find that balance? And at least if you found the balance, and you may have it through your own, some people gain it through physical exercise, through running, some through church and spirituality. So if you feel that you haven't got that balance, give mindfulness, taste mindfulness, suck it and see how it works out for you. It's scientifically proven by Professor Mark Williams from Oxford University, Zindel Ziegel, and John Teasdale back in 2004. It puts the individual in control. It's cheaper in the long run for depression than antidepressants. It's scalable in times of COVID and post-COVID times. It can be taught over the internet. So it has all of these benefits. And there's a place for antidepressants. There's definitely a place for talking therapies, although the queues are longer and longer. But I think there's also a place for mindfulness to help us rebalance ourselves, and not just to rebalance, but to flourish as well, as individuals and a society and as a planet. So my advice would be suck it and see, give it a whirl, have a bash, and see how you get on.
It's brilliant. And I just want to reflect back that point of it's coming from this place of balance, reconnecting with, you called it our nature. It's really about not just the survival that I think a lot of us have been in most recently, and even prior, but it's thriving.
Thriving. Really, it's interesting. Ariana Huffington came over to Parliament, I think it was in 2015. She says, Chris, I've got this book, and she couldn't launch it from Parliament. She did that from number 11 Downing Street, the Treasury. But we called MPs together, and she mentioned her book, and it was called Thrive. And I mentioned Professor Lord Richard Layard, who helped me establish mindfulness lessons in Parliament. He said, Chris, what's Ariana's book called? I said, Thrive. He says, oh no. I said, why? He said, that's what my book is that's what my book is called. And I believe there are two other books called Thrive. So it's about balance, but balance and beyond. It's moving from a position of balance and equanimity to thriving.
Oh, absolutely. So as we kind of close out our time together today, I just want to share a note of gratitude for this work that you've done, yes, and the report, and we'll definitely have to make sure that's available for folks to check out. Also, your report and work in terms of bringing this into the workplace, also super powerful.
Yeah, you've got the second report, yeah? We've got mindfulness report there, and we've got mindfulness in the workplace.
Yes, as we did in the beginning. Yes, I've got both.
Oh, and there's another great one, which is by the director of the Mindfulness Initiative, which has supported our all-party mindfulness group from the outset, and that's Jamie Bristow, the director of the Mindfulness Initiative, and his excellent article, which is highly acclaimed by John Kabat-Zinn and others, Mindfulness in Urgent Times. So I would urge people to, and if you could put a link onto that would be great. Thank you very much. Absolutely
do that. Yes, thank you so much, Chris. And we look forward to actually having you as our keynote for our event in November, and to have an ability for some of our leaders to come and ask you questions. So we're really grateful for that, and grateful for your journey, sharing it out, and just really planting those seeds that are now populating all across the globe with other leaders, as you mentioned. So thank you,
Donna, for the excellent work you're doing with your lovely organization and the NLC. Okay, thanks very much.